All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting for Monday, April 1st. We have two study session topics for tonight. We have our City Manager, Shawn Lewis, who to introduce the team, to lead a discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and concepts in the City of Englewood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll introduce from my seat and then introduce our three speakers. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on kind of the genesis of the DEI work at the city. When I arrived in 2019, one of the first things that we did was set up focus groups with all the departments in the city, really to hear feedback on things that they wanted to see improved, things that we were doing well. And through that work, heard from a number of departments about the need for more inclusion, more equity, and kind of running the gamut of that. And so we created a series of task forces through that process. One of them was the diversity and inclusion, I think it was called, task force that was led by Director Brad Power, as well as Director DeAndre, former Public Works Director. And they really set the groundwork for a committee that would be ongoing, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and which then took on the project of a strategic plan as the first real step of the committee. So that committee has been working well over the last couple of years, and want to just introduce our three speakers tonight who will be guiding us through this discussion. First is executive sponsor of the DEI committee, Christina Underhill, who also, of course, is the Director of Parks, Rec, Library, and Golf. We also have Nancy Fenton. She's Community Development Administrator in the Community Development Department. And then I believe Tim Dodd, Deputy City Manager, will close us off. Thanks, Christina.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, Christina Underhill, Director of Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf, and Executive Sponsor for the DEI Committee. So originally the approach for the DEI Committee was all staff-driven. It was voluntary. People volunteered their time. And the top focus was on accessibility and access overall. During the 2020 focus groups consisting of staff members from a variety of departments, there was an express interest in having diversity, equity, and inclusion programs for city staff. There was 5 task forces that were developed to address the different challenges. And in April of 2021, Council approved funding to develop the DEI strategic plan. And the task force worked on that plan with a consultant and to develop overall the strategic plan and eventually the blueprint for the actual projects we'll be working on related to DEI. So I'm going to ask Nancy Fenton, our Community Development Department Administrator and a member of the task force, to actually talk about the DEI committee.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the DEI committee was established in 2021, and it consists of 27 city employees that are interested in developing a DEI program. Since that time, the committee has periodically met off and on and worked on developing the plan, which was completed last year at the end of 2023. So looking forward, we'll be starting to meet monthly, and we are very excited to start tracking progress on the various projects that have been included and outlined within the plan. Tim, I think you're up.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll just quickly go over what's included in the plan, which I believe you had received a copy of. Those items that have a check mark next to it are ones that have been completed. Those with a bullet are ones that are still ongoing. Just as a reminder, this is a completely voluntary program. Nothing that this committee has done or focused on has been required of any staff member. Everything that has been produced by this committee is completely optional. So one of the first things we focused on was staff engagement at all levels. One of the areas that council did fund as part of the budget this current year with $5,000 was an interest group program. So this is a program where any employees that want to start a club effectively, it could be a fishing club, which is the first one that we had filed. It could be a first-time homebuyers club, whatever it is. That's an area that we've definitely seen some traction. We also have a few other goals, such as reviewing of existing policies, codes, and procedures, access to information and services. Some other cities and organizations that have DEI programs call it DEIA, and the A stands for accessibility. We have not used that nomenclature. However, a lot of the work that, as you probably know, our communications team is a leader statewide in terms of being prepared for state law that's going into effect now in terms of accessibility of our website and documents on our website. So that's a big part of our effort. And then finally, recruitment and retention of a diverse workforce. The internship program was the main thing we've completed there. And that was what we had for you this evening. Nope.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the presentation. Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is looking at the DEI plan. Specifically, it has a number of different goals and actions. A lot of these, it says the deliverable date is, I'm trying to square up the deliverable date for some of these already, most of them have already passed, fourth quarter of 2003 for a lot of them. I wanted to see if you could give me an explanation on the different training programs. Talked about creating, let's see if I can find this section here. Establishing DEI training programs for a variety of topics. Have those already been established? And if they have, what are the different topics that are being focused on, different events? Then it talks about, diversity, equity, inclusion trainings and new employee orientation. Has that been implemented? Are those trainings?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson. So to your first point, this was the plan as it was established a year ago. And definitely some of the deliverables have just not been accomplished yet. This is obviously an all-volunteer committee doing it on top of their day jobs and other things. And so we do have a tracker that our intern created last year and that every quarter the committee does look at. But yes, there are several areas where we are a bit behind. The training has not formally been created. The intent is that any training that we do DEI related would never be mandatory. There are compliance trainings for specific work groups, like related to insurance coverage and things like that. But other than that, cybersecurity and then emergency management and insurance requirements are the only required trainings that we have as a city that are compliance. The idea, though, is that we would have training offerings if people were interested in attending them. We are actually working to build out a training program that would have a catalog with all kinds of training. So it would be everything from Microsoft Word to strategic planning, and eventually there would be some DEI training offerings that would be a part of that again would be, all of those are meant to be enrichment trainings that would be completely optional. The lunch and learn area that did come up last time is an area where there have been a few DEI focused lunch and learns. Those are completely optional. The program started, I think, about a year and a half ago. Lunch and learns are on all kinds of topics. They're part of our training program, but they're really just meant for employees who are interested in learning about things. And there's going to be one in our interest group program. There's been several on sustainability topics. There was one that our community development department did on the city center and redevelopment. So lunch and learn is really just kind of an open topic that anyone can go to if they're interested in learning more.
So the only trainings that have been available for staff so far is through the lunch and learn?
I believe so. Yeah.
Program. I guess maybe this would be a council request. I'm just curious about what's going on with those trainings. Are there any training materials or anything that we can get as city council just to review the training materials associated with those trainings? That's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Prang.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. So just to clarify, beginning in 2019, there were focus groups held where city staff expressed interest in having more inclusion and equity and potentially programs related to that within the city. Is that correct?
Yes, it was before I started, but when City Manager Lewis started with the city, he basically held a listening tour, which included focus groups, and there were many different things that came up in terms of employees wanting to work on. But yes, this was one of the areas that did come up.
Okay. And do we continue is it an annual process that we have such focus groups to gauge that continuing interest? I'm just trying to get a sense of, we've got 27 staff committed to the committee, but do we have broader representation within those focus groups to express interest in these programs?
Thank you for the question, Member Prang. Your question makes me think maybe there should be an annual kind of listening tour. What we do now is an annual employee satisfaction survey, which we have pretty good response to from our employees, and we that covers a number of topics throughout the year, or a number of topics that deal with staff issues. The one thing that I would say is that we also have now an all-staff meeting that's every other month, and a lot of times our questions, I would say almost every time we have a meeting, there's probably something that's related to DEI that's asked, and a lot of times we have people from the committee, Director Underhill and others who answer those questions. And does that answer your question?
It does, yeah, thank you. And also, oftentimes with such programming, it is an organic process. I've seen it happen both ways. I work for the state, so it's more of a mandate for state employees. But we're just getting off the ground with this, right? We have we worked with the Equity Project to create a plan along with the efforts of the committee. So us seeing progress and movement on this, it's natural to see a slow progress because of the organic nature of us wanting this to be led and driven by city staff. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
You said it so well, I didn't need to respond, but
well.
yes, that's absolutely correct.
Thank you, Member Prang. Member Noonkamp.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. As I've tracked this work, both as a citizen and then as a council member, I've often thought about a comment from this CML magazine about how the city of Colorado Springs integrated DEI as a not only a value but a business practice. And I'm curious, for the city of Englewood, since this was something that employees asked for, do you see this as something that's important to employee engagement, satisfaction, retention? And also, as we're recruiting, or always looking to recruit good people into the city, how do you see this playing into how people evaluate the city and what the culture is like to work here?
Yeah, thank you, Member Noonkamp. I think we see it all around as something, and again, we wanted to take an organic approach. We didn't want to take an approach where it was compulsory in any way. But there are definitely employees or prospective employees, when they're looking at working here or elsewhere, it is something they look for in an organization. That's not every prospective employee, but it is some of them. So it is something that in a recruiting process that does come up. Again, we haven't really moved incredibly quick, I guess I'd say, in terms of formalizing some of these practices. But there are best practices, for example, in terms of questions that are asked during interviews. I think the interest group, and that also speaks much more broadly to employee engagement, which is something I think a lot of people are looking for. When we look at our exit interview data as well, people are looking for a positive work culture, and often having platforms to be able to connect and engage with other employees do speak to that.
It's helpful. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Yeah, a couple other questions. On the review of existing policies, codes, and procedures, we got a check mark by the review of the municipal Title 16. What was the outcome of that?
There we go. My recollection is just going through and make sure, the pronouns, the he, she were changed and to be more inclusive.
Okay, so that was just pronouns.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I can give a little more. You may remember a pretty lengthy discussion that council had about how many unrelated people living in a home. A lot of that was actually identified, if I'm not mistaken, by the Equity Project in their work as something that could be discriminatory on the basis of race, and also family origin in terms of blended families and intergenerational families. And so I know that was one thing that you all looked at and spent a lot of time on. It was also something that was in that planning document.
Thank you, City Manager. And my other question on the review of the codes and policies, where are we at in the review of the City of Englewood policy manual? Has that project begun, ongoing?
Yeah, a top-down review of all of our policies has not occurred yet. However, when we're producing new policies, as City Manager Lewis said, we do try to use neutral pronouns and things like that moving forward with new policies that we're generating.
Okay, thank you.
Member Prang?
Thank you. Just one more question around stakeholders. And in preparation for tonight, I was just curious about some of our local businesses and what their practices are. And I did notice that some of our bigger stakeholders, businesses in the city and employers within the city, Swedish, Craig, the schools, all embrace some form of a DEI plan. Is there any intention, or has there been opportunity for our committee members to interact or cross over with the successes that those organizations may have had around these types of plans?
Yeah, we've definitely had some conversations just as they've percolated up with planned, routine meetings that I guess we have with the school district and with the hospitals, but nothing formal. And I will say too, this plan that we generated, it's an administrative internal plan. If there is council interest or direction in taking this work more external, that's something we could do, but that really, we believe, we want to hear kind of council feedback on that. So,
Member Ward?
Thank you for the presentation. And the document here actually, answers a lot of questions and potential concerns that I had relative to DEI programs. It should be obvious to everyone here that I am a member of a class which is often not necessarily included in the definition of diversity or equity, and occasionally accused of causing problems with diversity and equity as a straight, married, white, middle-aged male. But as I look through this plan, one of the things that did raise a little bit of attention for me is strategy 4.1 on page 17 of the packet. Launch the recruitment for a new internship program with focused recruitment to various groups. And this is the type of can of worms that DEI represents to me that is a little concerning. Focused recruitment to various groups. I'm not sure what that means, but to me it sounds like if you're not a straight white male, we're gonna seek to recruit you because you're a part of that diverse community that we want to employ in an internship.
yeah, so thank you for that. It's a great question, Member Ward. The way we've interpreted it is that we're looking for people to be interns that before, a lot of internship programs, they only recruited through like the college, we send it to DU and CU, just to their college counseling offices. But our more inclusive method means that we're sending it more through different networks. So if there are job boards, related to specific groups, we may put them there. But it's also about looking for non-traditional students, students who may have taken a gap year, a couple gap years and gone back, students who are more in the trades in a traditional school, people that are in, non-traditional programs that wouldn't necessarily get outreach. And so it's really more about, it could include some of what you're talking about, but I think it really is meant to be not just like, hey, DU career office, here you go, but more working through professors. There's different associations, like there's I forget what it's called, but like a public administration club almost. So recruiting through that for things like water and sewer, trying to recruit more. Engineering, we have a few. So our city clerk's office has never had an intern. They're about to. They were really worried they wouldn't, because most people when they're 18 don't think I want to be a city clerk someday. And so they were really worried they would get candidates, but they had several fantastic ones just because of the way we've recruited. So
That actually sounds great. I've had a somewhat non-traditional career path myself, so I can appreciate getting an opportunity to get some experience in a job field when you're not meeting that, straight from college into the office type of work plan. Sounds helpful to me, so thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
One other question I had tonight was, you've mentioned several times that this is all voluntary. We know that that's not, a lot of different governments, cities, state, various government have required DEI programs for their employees. What I'm really concerned about is employees who don't want to have DEI stuff, pushed upon them. They have a different ideological basis, different ideological beliefs, and they don't want to have to go through this training. What's preventing us from ending up in a place where this suddenly becomes mandatory for all of the employees? Or is that the direction we're heading? Yeah.
I don't know if we'd ever make it mandatory. That may be something down the road we'd look at, but at this point, we want to keep it voluntary and allow people to make those decisions. That's why most of the topics have been lunch and learns. We're not forcing employees to go to those trainings if they don't choose to. Some of the topics that we've had may be controversial to another employee and they don't want to be a part of that. And so we understand that it's part of DEI is that diversity and letting people learn what they want to learn. Also having empathy towards a diverse workforce too, and understanding that. And so from a mandatory standpoint, there may be some things down the road we would make mandatory. However, at this point, it's voluntary all along the way. And we've had a really good response. Most of the lunch and learns that we've done, we just did the anti-Semitism one and had a really good turnout of our staff. And we learned a lot from that presentation from somebody from the outside talking about that. We've had DEI lunch and learn about pronouns, which we had some city staff that said afterwards they had that aha moment of, oh, now I get it. I understand why this is important. I didn't believe in it before. And so it's kind of chipping away slowly at some of these topics so people feel comfortable. And that's maybe when the mandatory happens, is when we have a workforce that understands what DEI is about and why it's important and why people need to feel included in an organization.
So down the road, you could see it become, what aspects of it do you think would be more likely to become mandatory as time goes on?
That's a good question, and that might be something we rely on our committee that we have, that is a diverse committee with a lot of different departments represented, and they can help us, they know their coworkers better than the director knows all the coworkers, or the city manager knows all of the staff, and they can help lead that to what actually should be mandatory, what challenges we're facing, what problems we may have, and how we can get past that through different types of trainings.
Okay, yeah, I personally don't want to see the DEI stuff ever become mandatory, because I know there are many employees who, I don't think there's any secret that DEI stuff has a significant left-leaning kind of ideological basis and bias, and we don't want to make our city a place where if you have a different set of beliefs, or you don't feel comfortable, or you feel like a certain ideological view is being pushed upon you as an employee. I don't want to see Englewood kind of place where you end up actually having a narrower set of people in terms of their ideological positions, because they don't want, they're not welcome in that environment, or they don't feel comfortable working in an environment where that sort of ideology is pushed on them. So I want to continue to resist that.
Member Prang?
Thank you. So included in the norm of what people know around protected groups that DEI work is centered around, we know that there's, a racial component, there's LGBTQ+, there's protections for different religious beliefs. In our practices within the city of Englewood, would we consider things like our aging employee population, a veteran that might need an emotional support dog with them at work to be able to come and add their talents to our talent pool, employees that are caretakers to other family members? We don't have a very narrow definition of what this work includes. It's very inclusive to a very broad group of people that just have different needs. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? Well, Director Underhill, Deputy City Manager, and I just lost your name all of a sudden. Ms. Fenton, yes. Ms. Fenton, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for educating us on the programs in place for the city and for providing that education for those that are looking to seek it. So thank you so much. All right, everyone, we're moving on to agenda item B. We have our sustainability coordinator, Ms. Melissa Englund, here to discuss the low-income energy efficiency outreach plan review. Good evening, Ms. Englund.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, City Council members. There we go. Great to be here with you all tonight to review the low-income energy efficiency outreach strategy. So to walk through the agenda for tonight, we're going to start with the strategic plan connection to this project. The problem and the goal of this project is aiming to address the strategy development process, Englewood's program participation in current residential energy efficiency programs, the resident outreach process for this strategy, then going into the importance and challenges of energy efficiency at rental and multifamily units, and then to end, we'll go over the proposed goals, actions, and targets, and the progress thus far. So this project relates to the strategic plan in multiple ways, and it helps advance or actually accomplish some of them. So the first is the project to create an energy efficiency outreach and education plan or strategy around reaching low-income areas to alleviate the energy burden. The other is a project in development to investigate ways to help renters benefit from energy efficiency upgrades and retrofits. And then this also helps us advance two metrics found in the strategic plan, and that is a % reduction in energy use in residential buildings and in carbon emissions. So the impetus for this project is largely around the energy burden, and this is defined as when a household spends more than 6% of its income on its energy bills. So as we'll see in the next slide, it's typically our lower income residents that have the highest energy burden. Not only that, but we see that lower income residents are paying more for energy per square foot than their higher income counterparts. It's typically the higher income households that can afford a more efficient house, more efficient appliances, which typically have a higher price tag up front, but then save you more money as time goes on. So diving in further into the City of Englewood's energy burden specifically, as you'll see from the top, it's clearly our residents in that 0 to 30% AMI that are struggling the most with their energy bills. And then if we go into that building category, we see that over half of the buildings for 0 to 30% AMI are categorized under the status of energy burdened. So the goal of this outreach strategy is simply just to improve energy efficiency in low-income households through education and outreach, helping to remedy the energy burden we're seeing in the City of Englewood for this group. Increasing energy efficiency for low-income households is nothing new. This strategy is really just aimed to help improve residents' education and awareness of the resources that are available to them, but then also to help the City of Englewood address where our gaps are and ways that we can improve to help increase the ways that we can assist residents. So going into the strategy development process, we began the research for this back in June of 2023, and this included looking at kind of what programs are currently out there, what Englewood's participation is in these programs, and what our historical relationship is to the organizations that run these programs. We then hosted a stakeholder engagement, and I'll get to that in a few slides. And then lastly, we solicited feedback on the draft plan through the city's Sustainability Commission, as well as through all the stakeholders who helped us with information for the strategy. So first looking at the outcome of that background research / stakeholder interviews. So for the sake of time, I'm not going through all these organizations. They're all listed in the strategy with their background. But at a high level, these are all programs that help improve energy efficiency in households and or reduce the energy costs. And for all of these programs outside of the E3 grant, these are all free for residents or building owners as long as they meet certain income eligibility requirements. And then something discovered in the stakeholder interviews was that for all the programs that are listed up there in the organizations, the city of Englewood really didn't have a historical relationship or current relationship with any of them outside of the Arapahoe County Weatherization Program. And then the last two things I want to point out in this slide specifically, the first one is around the Arapahoe County Weatherization Program. You can see that of the 155 jobs completed in Arapahoe County, only 13 were from the city of Englewood. Financially, when I was talking to their administrator, they said that we equated for less than 4.5% of Arapahoe County's weatherization funds. And then the last one I want to point out on this slide is numbers for the CARE program. So of the 600 program participants in 2022, we were only one. And that really stuck out to me because the CARE program has the highest income eligibility of all of those programs. There's a case study in the strategy of the city of Westminster. They were very much in the same boat that we are now. They only had one person participate in the CARE program. So what they did was they joined in a financial partnership, and they were able to increase that to 9 homes and unlock $52,000 in XL rebates. So moving on to resident outreach. So the city conducted a residential energy efficiency survey in order to solicit feedback from residents. This was in both English and Spanish. And I went to Table at 2 neighborhood nights events, and I purposely picked the ones that were in or near census blocks with high, low income populations. And then finally, me and the neighborhood resource coordinator and the public information officer all did a mobile home outreach. We did door-to-door 5 of the 7 mobile home parks, and we solicited the same survey to those folks. And so the results for that survey was that we heard from 22 residents. 80% of those that responded said that they had never utilized one of the energy efficiency programs. Of that 80%, 62% said that they were just unaware that the programs existed to begin with. Another 14% said that they were not eligible, but part of me is kind of wondering if they actually were not sure of the income eligibility, kind of going over that CARE program earlier with that higher than normal income eligibility for that one. I will also say when I was doing the background research for this, it was really confusing to figure out what the income eligibility was for different programs, because certain organizations are using different data sources for those. And then we asked folks, how can the city best improve in helping you connect with energy efficiency programs? All of the results could fall under these categories. So the biggest one was better and/or increased communication of available programs, to send direct mail and to send out emails. Oh. It's not working. There we go. And then one thing I wanted to bring up before we go into the proposed goals, actions, and targets is this importance and challenge of energy efficiency in rentals and multifamily. And starting with the rentals, so about 80% of Englewood's low-income households live in rental units. But there's a huge challenge that they face, and that is the landlord-tenant split incentive. And that's when one party, typically the owner, pays for energy improvements, while the other party, the tenant, receives the benefit of that utility reduction. So this is slightly a little bit changing due to HB 21-1286 that was passed, and this requires Colorado's largest buildings, 50,000 square feet or more, to meet certain energy or greenhouse gas reduction targets by 2026, and that does include multifamily buildings. And the buildings that do not comply are going to be faced with recurring fines. So it's going to be no longer financially viable or maybe even legal for them to not comply and update those energy efficiency upgrades. All right, now going into the proposed actions and targets. So the first one we have here is to leverage and strengthen partnerships with local serving nonprofits around energy assistance and efficiency. And our action for that is to provide or secure some kind of funding to make this possible. Our next goal is to increase resident participation in current low-income energy efficiency programs. And how we're going to try and accomplish this is by tracking the participation over the years so we can see and gauge kind of which one of our efforts are working well, are they not working well, do we have to pivot? The next goal has 4 action items underneath it. So this is to initiate specific education and outreach campaigns for different housing types. As you saw in the way earlier slide, different building types probably need different things and have different energy burdens. So the first one we have is to work with Englewood mobile home communities to coordinate outreach around current energy efficiency offers that suit their needs. And we have the suit their needs in that because when we were doing the outreach, we talked to one woman who said, I have dyslexia, it's really hard for me to fill out these applications. And then another person said that they didn't have internet, they didn't really trust internet, so it was hard for them to access. So really working with their community to figure out how we can best help them is what we should be, what we're proposing. The next action is to utilize the BPC map to see which of our multifamily buildings that are over 50,000 square feet are not in compliance currently, and how we can help connect them with Xcel Energy that has free programs for them to help them kind of bring down that energy costs. And then tangentially to that one, we also have to work with multifamily buildings under that 50,000 threshold because they're also open to those free Xcel programs and they could all benefit from that as well. And then the last one, this is a project that's already listed in the sustainability plan. It just worked really well here, which was to continue to develop and improve the E3 program. And then the last goal also has 4 actions with it. It's to make finding information on available energy efficiency programs easy, accessible, and frequent to Englewood residents. Our first action there is to have a recognized energy efficiency partner specialized in low-income programs to attend Englewood events. Another one is to promote the landing page on the city website that lists all of these residential energy efficiency programs available. The third one is to update and post income eligibility requirements for different energy efficiency programs on city social media channels. And then the last one is to include information on energy efficiency programs in the Englewood magazine and newsletter. And then to end, just to go over the progress we've done so far. So the residential energy efficiency page that is on the website is a product because of the information we heard from residents. So we added it there so that folks could reference it. We also, hopefully you all saw in last month's utility bill, we did a residential energy efficiency information utility bill insert. And this one we already know has been pretty successful. Nancy Fenton, who's the program administrator for the E3, that she definitely noticed an increase in calls about folks interested in the program. And I myself have received calls and emails from folks wanting to learn more about the different energy efficiency programs. We did multiple social media posts and e-newsletters on available programs. And then finally, we have the Arapahoe Weatherization Program coming to the Earth Day celebration. And we're also working with other organizations to see if they can come to our events throughout the year. So that is all I have, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Ms. Englund. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Member Ward.
So you talked briefly about the incentive for landlords not to improve their properties. What, if anything, can we do to reduce the burden? Because we know that the property improvements reduce the burden on the residents who live in them. Is there something that would benefit or incentivize energy improvements for rental properties?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I should have said this earlier too. All of those programs, renters can take advantage of. The landlord has to sign off on it, but they have no cost incurred from it. But I think that's probably an educational gap too, of like, this will not cost you any money. It's just kind of, if anything, it's a good resale for later.
Yeah, I think the flip side of that would be if somebody does make substantial improvements to the property that increase the value, then the landlord might be inclined to say, hey, this is worth, 10% more in rent now every month or something along those lines. But yeah, I'd like to see that occur, particularly if the renters are paying for the improvements. I wouldn't see why the landlord would resist.
Yeah, and there's no cost for the renters either for all, if not a majority of those programs. They come in, they do a free energy audit, They can give you on the spot sometimes like free water efficiency upgrades, free energy, like light bulb upgrades. They're trying to make it as easy and accessible as possible.
Member Newnham.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think that the strategy is thoughtful and well laid out, and I really appreciate the stakeholding and the partners that you've identified. It'd be great to see more of this work happening in Englund. I'm curious, this is something that I've brought up to the city manager before. So much of the challenge that we see here that you've identified is people just not knowing what resources are available to them. And there are many different areas, energy efficiency being one of them, where our low-income residents don't know about the different support systems that the city or community partners have to offer them. How are you thinking about this piece, energy efficiency, tying into maybe a larger place where people can find information on all the different kinds of supports? Are you thinking about how it connects? And so it's not siloed just in energy, it's a landing page just in energy, but how does it connect to all the other supports that people can find?
Yeah, so that was something that the Sustainability Commission talked about too. We had one meeting where we had the Arapahoe weatherization folks there, grid alternatives, and they were like, wow, we feel like we learned so much information, but we don't know what to do with it, like where to go next. So that was partially the outcome for that residential energy efficiency page. We're trying to have the Sustainability Commission kind of be our cheerleaders for this stuff, where if a resident is like, I really have old windows or need new lighting, they can say, hey, there's this one concise page you can go to. Another thing is this energy efficiency really helps people with aging in place. It could tie really well with that. One of the calls I actually got last week from someone who got the utility bill insert was a woman in her 70s who's on Social Security, and her husband's in her 80s, and she was a perfect fit for a lot of these programs. So I think it can tie in really well with that.
That's great. I think my nudge would be, how do we think more about, if someone's searching, support in Englewood or low income supports in Englewood, how do they find this connected to the other things that are available as well, so that it's not just off by itself. But thanks, I appreciate it.
Go ahead, Member Pring.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. To build on what Member Newnham was speaking to around awareness, is there a possibility, given that it's part of your action steps to attend events out in the community, that we could have like iPads or something on hand where, if someone comes up to an Englewood table and is wanting to learn about these programs, that they could get assistance right there on the spot, especially for those who may have limited or no access to the internet?
Yeah, you are reading my mind. For the Earth Day event where the Arapahoe weatherization program will be there, I'm actually going to connect with the administrator to see if we can print out applications, if we can have tablets there so she can really walk through with them, because I think that would be a great opportunity for them to get that one-on-one help.
Ms. Englund, I got a few questions for you. So on the slide that you show that Englewood only has 13, 3, 1, 1, 1, 8, whatever, those, do we have any data from Arapahoe County on who is taking advantage of these in order to kind of just identify, have they been in their homes for over 10 years or 15 years, whatever it happens to be? Are they of a certain demographic, just so we can start utilizing that information on who's more likely to take advantage of these programs within the city of Englewood, so we can have a more targeted approach?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they do, but that's something I can reach out to them for. They mainly gave me kind of like the cost breakdowns and participation, none of the demographics. So
Okay.
I can look into that. That's a great idea.
In terms of the E3 program that we have here in Englewood, don't we always utilize all our funding for the E3 program? So that
Yeah.
one's successful.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
successful.
and I think part of the reason is that we do a pretty good job of, I believe we administer the program ourselves. We marketed it pretty well. We've been talking about it for many years. Some of these are a little bit newer, at least maybe the names have changed or something along those lines, so we haven't been able to build that brand for those programs. But it seems like we're doing something right on the E3 side that we need to, kind of do the same thing for some of these others. Just trying to figure out what that is, if it's really, are they being administered by Arapahoe County and not by us or by Excel? I think there's a couple of things that we may have to look at to kind of build on the successes that we have for E3, but not for these other ones, and kind of figure out what that is. The other thing I did want to mention is that I think some of these, the fact that we're so low, I think would be a metric that I'd like to kind of track as part of a strategic plan in the future, in terms of let's start striving for getting 5 or 8, whatever the number is, in the future, to try to start having a goal in terms of just getting people onto some of these programs. So I'd like to start tracking that metric at some point. I think I had a fourth question, but now I lost my thought on it. So I'll go to someone else if I could think of what that last question was. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just had a comment on, or trying to understand the CARE program. It looks like, 600 available, only one in Inglewood. Though I've heard that you or apply for that one, and they just say, sorry, we're full, and we have a wait list. We don't know when the wait list will, so just please go apply to Arapahoe County Weatherization Program. If that's the case that's going on there, then it's not really a functional program if they can't actually fulfill that. Do you know anything about that? If they're actually able to if you're able to fill out an application and get that help?
Yeah, I actually didn't know that, so that's very good to know. What I did know is that if you applied to that program and you fell within a lower income of that Arapahoe County weatherization, they would send you there first because they're essentially the same program. It just has a higher income eligibility.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? Don't see any further questions, Ms. Englund. Thank you very much for the presentation. I love the work that you're doing here. Let us know how we can support you in trying to get the word out about these programs. Obviously, it's something that I'd like to see move up here in the near future. So thanks again, Ms. Englund. All right, everyone, we have about 15 minutes. We'll go ahead and adjourn, and then we'll get back together at the top of the hour. So thank you so much. Members of council, if you could please be seated. All right, good evening, everyone. We are now back. I call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Yes, good evening. Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Present.
Member Noonenkamp,
Present.
Member Prang,
Present?
Member Russell, Member Ward,
Present.
Member Wright, Mayor Sierra.
Present.
5 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Member Russell and Member Wright did let me know that they would not be in attendance tonight. Moving on to agenda item 5, consideration of minutes from the previous session. Any changes to the minutes from the council meeting on March 18th? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the March 18th meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Ward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to appointments, communications, proclamations, and recognition. Tonight, we want to recognize Brewability for being named the number 5 independent pizzeria in the United States by OnDeck's highest rated independent restaurant list. So a little bit about Brewability. Yeah, it's a great achievement. So we want to celebrate the achievements of Brewability. It's worth also noting that April is National Autism Month. Brewability's commitment to inclusivity aligns perfectly with the spirit of this month, highlighting the importance of recognizing and supporting individuals of all abilities. Brewability is an inclusive brewer that employs adults of all abilities and has been located in Englewood since 2019. Ms. Tiffany Flexter, she has been a champion and local advocate for accessibility, raising awareness and acceptance of people of all abilities and contributions they make to our community. So we appreciate Brewability in choosing to do business here in Englewood, and congratulations on your achievement. Ms. Flexter, if you want to come up and just say a few words, and then we'll ask the group to come on up and take a picture with myself and members of council. So.
Oh, gosh.
There you are.
All right,
Go ahead.
well, thank you so much for this award. Really appreciate it. We've got Elise here and Morgan. So, yeah, we hope everyone comes down and sees us. Do you want to say anything?
Thanks a bundle. I'd love to come make pizza for you. Good talk.
Perfect. So, yeah, so congratulations on the award. This is a big achievement for Englewood, for yourselves, and also for Englewood as well. But thank you so much. And if we could just take a quick picture with members of council, and then I think our city manager has the camera, so.
Perfect.
Oh, sorry. You go ahead, please. Okay. All right. Good. Tighten up a little. Great. Now look at me.
All right, we're moving on to agenda item 7. This is recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Please limit So council may ask questions for clarification, but then there would not be any dialogue, and please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Also, I wanted to make council aware, it is actually part of our code in order for us to ask for the city that somebody that is speaking provide their city of residence or their cross streets. So we do have that as part of code. So I do want to just align with everyone on council that if we do ask somebody to come and speak, or somebody wants to speak, that we are going to be asking for that information. So if you're able to provide that information, we are going to ask for it. If not, then we will just ask you not to give public comment for tonight. So, and with that, I think we're all in alignment. Our first speaker tonight is going to be Kathleen Bailey, an Englund resident, here to address council regarding the need for an actual 25-year rain event capacity infrastructure in the upstream half of the South Englewood Basin. Good evening, Ms. Bailey. If you could just state your name and your address for cross streets.
Testing. Kathleen Bailey, Jason and Union. Good evening, fellow Englewood residents. Tonight I want to introduce this excellent Mile High Fudgesick Dewberry 2022 City of Englewood Major Drainage Way Plan Baseline Hydrology Report that took 2 years to complete. But first, a little history. Shawn Lewis was an assistant city manager working on wayfinding projects for the city of Longmont when terrified residents in our city suffered the deadly devastation of the July 23, 2018 flash flood. And yet the first thing Shawn Lewis declared to me after he was hired as a city manager in August 2019 was, quote, "Not that many people were impacted by the flood." And unfortunately, just 1 year later, Shawn Lewis had convinced the City Council to drop their 2019 $7.6 million Calibre S3 plan that had been part of a year-long study and adopt the Shawn Lewis significantly cheaper $2.2 million plan that took less than 3 weeks to produce. This was a socioeconomic prejudice budget decision made by Shawn Lewis, which is illegal if city accepts federal funding. But sadly, this happens a lot with infrastructure investments. The wealthy get real infrastructure and the not so wealthy get tweaks on an existing system, if anything at all. I will address that further in another meeting. Unlike Shawn Lewis's 2019 comment declaring not that many people were impacted by the flood, on page 13 of this 2022 report, they describe the event this way. The flood event resulted in a tragic death at 4650 South Tacoma, caused widespread damage, was front page news, resulted in a sinkhole in a major roadway, and created a sense of urgency for stormwater planning throughout the community. The City of Englewood Public Works Department immediately set about the task of prioritizing stormwater improvements through revitalized stormwater master planning. The first part of that statement reflects the reality of the vast impact that devastating flood had. The second part of that statement reflects what City Council initially demanded of staff after the deadly flood. Calibre Engineering was chosen in 2018 to update the 1999 master plan so that the City Council could have current information to base their decisions on. And all of the Calibre's plans are currently listed among the top 10 priority projects in our 2020 Hazen City of Englewood Stormwater Master Plan, including priorities 1 and 2, which are S1 and S2, representing the downstream half of the South Englewood Basin with a cost of $30.3 million. Priority 4, which is S3, representing the upstream half of the South Englewood Basin with a cost of $7.6 million. And Priority 5, Reach 2 Dry Gulch, representing Yale Avenue to University Boulevard with a cost of $24.9 million. Like all studies before Calibre identified those two drainage basins, the 1,221 acre South Englewood Basin and the Dry Gulch Reach in need of the greatest amount of stormwater infrastructure protection. But unlike the cheaper Altu plan, the $7.6 million Calibre S3 plan actually replaces the existing dangerously undersized 2-year rain event capacity main trunk line pipes with 25-year rain event capacity main trunk line pipes, while Shawn Lewis's significantly cheaper $2.2 million Altu plan simply keeps the existing dangerously inadequate two-year rate of incapacity main trunk line pipes and simply adds additional ancillary pipes and additional inlets and enlarges some of the existing ancillary pipes. But ancillary pipe systems simply serve and drain into the major trunk line pipe system. With the exception of a few enlarged inlets into the main trunk line and a block segment of Tufts pipe, all of the Altig additions are ancillary additions that also simply serve and drain into the existing two-year rate event capacity main trunk line pipe. And yet, our city council continued to believe that the Altig plan has actually increased the upstream half to 25-year rain event capacity. And despite the also inconvenient fact that on page 21 of this most recent 2022 Mile High Flood District Dewberry Major Drainage Way Plan hydrology report, they identify that the existing capacity of the upstream half of the South Linwood Basin remains only a two-year rain event capacity system. I will continue to share critical data from this excellent report in contrast to CM and staff's Altig claims at future meetings under new restricted public speaking rules that council will be announcing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey, for your talk tonight. Any questions for members of council? Seeing none, Ms. Bailey, thanks for your time tonight. Up next is Kayleen Nichols, an Englewood resident here to address council regarding thanks and praise. Good evening, Ms. Nichols. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
I'm Kayleen Nichols. Am I in the right place? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I live at Calumet and Stanford in Englewood. I'm grateful to City Council and grateful to the city for the leadership you provide, especially to the City Council for the activities and the positive leadership. Thank you. And thank you for passing Code Next. I think it has the potential for helping all homeowners, especially people in my generation, to be able to remain in their own homes. You could rent a room, and that helps provide income to pay bills. And thank you for the prompt action on a particular issue that I emailed my council member on. There's a low spot on my street. I shoveled the sidewalk to only have the water from the melting snow runoff flood the sidewalk up to an inch deep. It freezes overnight, resulting in a dangerous ice sidewalk. My council member immediately forwarded pictures and the messages to the authorities needed, and now that location is noted for plowing if the weather indicates it. A long, thin ice skating rink is not a good sidewalk. The thing I suspect is that any one of you would have been as prompt no matter what district I lived in, and I'm really grateful for that. I want to thank you for supporting the citywide and some of these multi-city programs that address the homeless or people in a crisis. And thank you for encouraging and supporting ministries like 5280, Cafe 180, Giving Heart, and the various organizations that supply food and other supplies. I'm grateful for your willingness to address these complex issues. They're not easy. And I want to really thank you for renovating the parks and the schools. It's very forward-looking. And for all the activities that are provided or else encouraged for neighbors to do, and for tackling overdue problems like the sewer updates. And thank you for the communication. I've not lived in a place in a long time that had excellent communication. This is a really worthy read. The annual report takes a while. I'm only halfway through, but I'll get there. She just mentioned these. These were in our utility bill. It's information I wasn't aware of. I really appreciate those sorts of things. And I want to thank you, lastly, for your commitment to Englewood. Thank you.
Ms. Nichols, thanks for coming tonight. Any questions for members of council? Seeing us, Ms. Nichols, thanks for your time tonight.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Member Noonkamp.
Ms. Nichols, I'm just curious, how long have you lived in Englewood, if you don't mind sharing?
I've lived here 8.5 years. I moved, as I said, the only other time I was here, from a suburb that I lived in 31 years outside of a very large city, and the leadership was not forward-looking. And I moved in. It was a lovely neighborhood. By the time I was moved out, I was advised to buy a safety double lock storm door. So that's the difference between forward-looking leadership and where I came from.
Thank you so much.
That's why I'm grateful.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight, Ms. Nichols. Up next is Gary Kozak, here to address council regarding city council procedures. Good evening, Mr. Kozak. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Good evening, City Council. Gary Kozak, Oxford and Lipan. I come before you as you see me all the time. I've asked several times about traffic studies, and everybody seems to have, oh, well, we've got them, but those are what developers have done and hasn't been a neutral traffic study. But I also come forward because I was at the study session the other day, and you still want to refuse to give the judge a salary increase. He submitted his budget. You guys approved his budget as it was. There's got to be a personal factor behind it because you gave everybody else in the city their raises except him. He's a man that goes by election to be put into that position, but the city of Englund pays for it. Us taxpayers pay for it. He deserves to get his raise like everybody else has. So consider that. Now, another step. Like I said, I've asked for all the traffic studies and stuff, and it never seems to go any further. Okay? I just got assaulted by Sam Chavez on my way in, and there is a police report filed. Okay? And that goes back to the fact that the city council disenfranchised 1,700 signatures in a petition. And what was that all based about? Traffic study. I know that there's been violations going on. Steve, I heard you really opposing the judge's salary, but you've also opposed me and made comments here and there. You sat right here on the dais and read the rules, and yet you still went along with not adhering to your sworn oath, along with several other council members here. Okay? I will unseat you in your next election. I've got over 2,000 people right now that I had coached before living in Englewood and have families in Englewood. I'm not going to go after a recall. It costs the city too much money. Now, as far as the city and their reaction, I've never had a speeding ticket, never had a ticket, other than a parking ticket maybe. And the other day, I get a speeding ticket on Broadway in front of King Soopers in the middle of the afternoon, which is almost impossible because of the traffic there. And I went ahead and opposed that. Now I turn around and I get pulled over in my truck for a broken crystal on my tail light. But her first comment was, your license plate is expired. Sorry, it was not. I got a 30-day grace period so that I get emissions, and it hadn't reached the 30 days, and it's got a valid plate on it now. What is our officer doing? Pulling somebody over for a broken crystal, and she even admitted that the tail light works. That's 2 instances there. My truck got paintballed. There's a little bit of a theory going on here of what's going on is that you guys can't stand the public coming forward, and I represent a whole lot of people because they're afraid and nervous to come forward. Is this harassment? I had a city manager that went after my partner because he was on the library board appointed by the school board. And yes, I used CORE to find out the information and got all the communication. If you're going to treat us citizens like that, I will announce right now that I will, in fact, unseat you, Steve, in my district on your next election. I could get 2,000 signatures within a weekend because I've been around that long all my life. So if you turn around and you reasonably assume and pay the judge what he's worth, I will stop coming over here until I see some real major issues again. I know you're trying to limit us to when we come up and speak. And God bless you guys. I know what it's like because I sat in your seat. But you have this open forum for us to talk and present what we see as a problem out there, and then you need to address it. Not just blow it off as, oh yeah, he's just here to blow more hot air. I've lived here all my life.
Mr. Kozak, your 5 minutes are up. Thank you for your time tonight, Mr. Kozak. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Ward.
Mr. Kozak, do you happen to know offhand how much the judge currently makes on his annual salary?
It doesn't matter. His comparable income compared to the other districts.
And my second question is, have you at any time heard me to date announce that I intend to run for a second term?
No.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, Mr. Kozak, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. God bless you.
Up next is Charles Downing, here to address council. Good evening, Mr. Downing. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
I will. My name is Charles Downing, Charles C. Clay Downing. I live in the 5300 block of South Broadway. I'm here because I've become associated with the council through attending Elevate Englewood, and I'd like to speak tonight about the city's relationship with the minders of our election data, which is the county. Today, it is imperative that we address a fundamental aspect of our democratic process, the integrity of the voter database. For without a robust and accurate voter registry, we not only risk undermining the very foundation of our democracy, it ceases to exist. Let me begin by acknowledging the current state of affairs. Our city boasts a population of approximately 34,000 citizens, yet the county voter database reports a staggering 47,000 active voters under our banner. This significant discrepancy cannot be ignored. Moreover, in the last citywide election, there were reported only 23,000 registered voters, of which 12,000 ballots were received. These numbers paint a troubling picture of inconsistency and discrepancy within our electoral system, which I might add, none of which is the city of Englewood's fault, because the data is maintained at the county. Challenges clearly abound. Despite alleged frequent updates to the database, including the most recent purported update, which occurred March 15th, the numbers, as we have discussed, remain the same. This inconsistency raises significant concerns about the integrity and accuracy of our voter database. There's some recommendations that I'd like to suggest. We need to take proactive and immediate steps to address these discrepancies and rebuild public confidence in our electoral process. Rather than simply recommending more database updates, I propose a different approach. We should prioritize database auditing through rigorous queries and temporal analysis. By conducting thorough database audits using specialized queries, we can identify and rectify inconsistencies, duplications, and inaccuracies in the voter database. This approach goes beyond routine updates and ensures that the information stored in the database accurately reflects the reality of our city's population, which is really its only job if you think about it. Moreover, it is imperative that we identify the specific queries used to generate what turn out to be faulty data presentations at the county website and understand the root causes of those inaccuracies in that data, and whether it leads to more systemic issues and how to prevent future discrepancies going forward. By examining the queries used to extract and manipulate the data at the county, we can gain valuable insights into any illogical reasoning, programming errors, or other technical issues that may have contributed to the inaccuracies. This deeper analysis will enable us to implement a targeted solution and safeguards to ensure the accuracy and integrity of our voter database moving forward. Transparency and accountability are paramount in this process. We must be absolutely forthcoming about any errors or shortcomings in our data management practices and openly share our findings with the public. This level of transparency demonstrates our commitment to accountability and fosters trust in our electoral process. Let's not only address the symptoms of database inaccuracies, but also delve into the root causes by identifying and scrutinizing the queries used to generate the incorrect data that purports to represent us, but doesn't. By doing so, we can pave the way for more reliable and transparent elections in our city. I will be posting all of the documentation that I use to present this. It's all built from public-facing data on county and city websites. It'll be on the platform X /Clay Downing, and look for the hashtag Englewood Counts. I'm now going to accept any questions. If you have any, thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Downing, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight. Any questions for members of council? I guess I do have a question. It sounds like you already answered it, but you received all your data from the county website, correct?
Yes, sir. Public-facing data.
Okay.
With the exception of Census 2020 data,
Okay.
which is pseudo-public facing.
Okay. Can you provide us with that data that you received? It sounds like you're going to make it available as part of.
Yes, sir.
So okay. I would like to take a look at that. So, perfect. Any further questions for members of council? Seeing none. Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, Member Ward.
Have you talked to anyone at the county about this? As you know, you made reference to this. The county maintains the voter registration data for Arapahoe County, which includes Englewood.
What got me onto this was the night at Elevate when we met our county commissioner, Ms. Warren Gully, and the numbers that she provided to me didn't add up then, and that's why I decided to audit the county versus the city, and that's how I came up with these discrepancies that I'm pointing out today, which is like 14,000 voters, which they have there that we don't have here.
And have you looked into the laws and rules regarding voter registration, when a voter can be removed from the list and for what reasons?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Okay.
Member Noonekamp?
Just one more question, it's Johnny over here. Hi. Thank you for being here tonight. Do you know if the county data includes both incorporated and unincorporated Englewood? As you know, there are several areas that are labeled Englewood that are not city.
Yes, I do. That's what first tripped me up as to what was going on here. On the county website, they have a data panel about voter information, and one of the filters they let you apply is by city. And so obviously I chose Englewood, and that's where I discovered that there are reported to be 47,000 registered voters from Englewood, 23,000 independent, the other 22,000 mixed bag, but obviously against a census population of 33,000, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Right, but what you're saying is that it's not distinguished in that data what is incorporated Englewood versus unincorporated Englewood, and what might just be labeled city in the address.
I'm not aware that there is such a thing as unincorporated Englewood because it's just broken up by city. It doesn't come up by, for example, zip code, where we would get that extra pseudo Englewood up in the tech center. It doesn't seem to come up that way. It comes up by geographic.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Downing. Have you just used the online interface on Arapahoe County, or have you downloaded the actual data files?
I've used the online interface because it's public facing. Obviously, I have no access to the back end. And I have downloaded all of the data files that they allege support their data. But there's problems with those as well, because the Excel spreadsheet that alleges to support some of their previous data is not probative.
Thank you.
With no further.
Not really a question, Mayor. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If you'll indulge me for a moment. I would love to help you with some of this data. I've spent 10 years in the state elections division. I've asked this very question myself. I found some answers that differ from perhaps the conclusion that's being drawn, but if you're willing to hang out, I think we might have some time after the meeting.
That wasn't a question, so.
It was not. I apologize.
All right, Mr. Downey, with no further questions, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
That concludes scheduled public comment. Do we have any sign?
We only have one online for
Okay.
unscheduled.
All right, perfect. So go ahead, City Clerk Carlisle.
All right, Chelsea Anderson, are you available to speak?
I am. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, perfect. We'll give you 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Thank you guys for letting me speak tonight. My name is Chelsea Anderson. My pronouns are she, her, and I live near Tufts and Calumet. I am a lifelong resident of Englewood, and I am invested in the best interest of our city. I encourage everyone to utilize the many modern day resources available to examine and research, especially regarding social matters that may not validate their personal confirmation bias. I'm happy to provide citation for some of my speaking points if you'd like. While someone may initially interpret these strategies as potentially limiting to their individual rights or opportunities, they will quickly learn that this is a common misconception rooted in oppression that has been continually disproven throughout history. For example, allowing women and people of color the right to vote and hold public office has positively impacted every aspect of society, even with the lack of representation and extreme opposition still prevalent throughout all levels of government worldwide, and obviously alive and well here in Englewood. A public official's refusal to demonstrate basic respect or champion for the inclusion and basic rights of all constituents, rather than continuing their education to ensure they have the most relevant and up-to-date, accurate information, is disappointing and unevolved. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, or DEIA for short, represents a historical function and is a practicing science. It is vital that those in power and with public authority use their privilege to ensure everyone in our community is treated equitably, regardless of the council member's personal bias and prejudice. As the governing council who oversees our city as staff and provides direction to our community, it is imperative that council members consider the importance of DEIA as a fundamental component to the success of all goals beyond that of just those listed under the governance section in our strategic plan. DEIA warrants a much greater focus and effort than our council has previously given. Dr. Rachel Minkin, who obtained her PhD from Brandeis University, has contributed to numerous studies focused on social and demographic trends at Pew Research Center. Pew Research Center, a nonpartisan organization, conducts demographic research, content analysis, and other data-driven social science research. They do not take policy positions. Their mission is to generate a foundation of facts that enriches the public dialogue and supports sound decision-making. They are nonprofit, nonpartisan, and non-advocacy. They value independence, objectivity, accuracy, rigor, humility, transparency, and innovation. Dr. Minkin's report in May of 2023 on diversity, equity, and inclusion found 2/3 or more.
Ms. Anderson, I need to cut you off. Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much for speaking tonight, Ms. Anderson. Let me see if there's any questions from members of council. Seeing none, Ms. Anderson, thank you very much for your time tonight. All right, everyone, that concludes unscheduled public comment. I'm actually giving a response tonight for public comment. So to all the speakers, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight about the issues that are important to you. Ms. Bailey, thank you again for coming and speaking to our stormwater plan. Obviously, we're in disagreement in terms of what we've accomplished, but obviously we're going to keep looking at what we can do in order to better mitigate flooding around the city. So it's always something that we will continue to look at in terms of what to prioritize next. We're only looking at one part of the city right now, but obviously there's a lot of flood-prone areas across the city. So we're going to continuously evolve and looking to see how we can improve the city overall. Ms. Nichols, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight, for the positive words, and for the positive changes that you're seeing within Englewood. So I do appreciate you coming and speaking to that. Mr. Kozak, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight. Just a couple things. I know on the traffic studies, you mentioned, I know for some of the traffic studies that are required as part of development, such as the Sam's Automotive, any PUD, those are carried out by the developers. It's something that the city staff does review as part of the PUD process. I'm not aware of many other traffic studies that the city may do. I'm sure that we do some other ones across the city that aren't tied to development. But in terms of major developments, I know it is required as part of the PUD process. The other aspect of it, I don't want you to get the wrong idea in terms of the judge's pay increase being stalled. Yes, it has been approved as part of the 2024 budget, but just like any other item within the budget, it still requires a city council vote. I'm hoping that we get to that point here in the near future. The only reason why it's been delayed is that some members of council were asking for additional information prior to us signing off on that pay increase. So that's all it is. I'm hoping that we come to a resolution on that here in the near future. Mr. Downing, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight regarding your concern in terms of the voter registry. This has come up recently. It came up last year as well. I know that we looked into the issue last year. I'm going to ask our city clerk to also I'm not going to ask her, but we want to obviously just keep that integrity in terms of the election process, especially with this being a presidential year. So I'm going to have to find out what we did last year in terms of just alleviating concerns, but also finding out what we're doing moving forward here for the vote in November, as well as our municipal elections next year. So I'm hoping that there's a council request that comes from that as well. And Ms. Anderson, thank you very much for coming and speaking to the purpose of DEI policies and the importance of our words and actions as leaders of the city. There's a lot more that we could be doing. I know that I'm happy with the direction that staff has taken us. I'm sure that we're going to keep evolving our policies as we move forward, but I appreciate you coming and speaking to the importance that DEI plays for you and also what we should be doing as leaders of the city. So thank you very much for that, Ms. Anderson. Member Noonekamp, I guess you have something to add as well. Go ahead.
Yes, can I just make one comment in response to public comment? Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Kozak. Mr. Kozak, thank you for being here. Obviously, we don't always see eye to eye. And I'm disappointed, obviously, that you seem to feel that you are being retaliated against. I have the highest trust in our police force that would never be the case. And I just think it's important to state on the record, if you made an allegation about our city manager, that there was no wrongdoing. The DA found zero evidence of any retaliation against your partner. We hold the school board in high esteem and work with them closely. And I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I think it's important for the record and for the public who's watching to know that there has been no wrongdoing in any investigation. So thank you for being here tonight.
Any further comments from members of council? Seeing none, that concludes unscheduled public comments. With that, we'll just move into consent agenda items. I didn't see anything get pulled from tonight's agenda, so if there's nothing to be pulled, can I get a motion to approve 9A1, 9C1, 2, and 3?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonekamp.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you so much. No public hearing items for tonight. Moving on to 11B1. This is approval of ordinances on second reading. This is the IGA with Adams County Health Department for the Colorado Local Entity Air Network Program. Ms. Englund, I don't think that you have anything new to share from last week, but any questions or any questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11B1?
I move 11B1.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonekamp.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to 11C1. This is the Public Building Electrification Grant. We do have Ms. Englund up for this one.
Hello again, Mayor and City Council members. I'm here along with members from the Public Works Department to answer any questions you all have around this grant at a very high level. It'll help cover 50 to 75% of the cost of the energy audit that we're already paying for, and costs are already incurred for that. And then will help us also go for a grant that we could get up to $750,000 for building electrification. There is that 25% match, which is up to $250,000, but those are funds we already have in a capital improvement plan for building upgrades just like this.
So are there any questions for members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C1?
I move to approve 11C1.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Nanenkamp.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much, City Clerk. And that takes us just into Mayor's Choice. Just a quick announcement from me. The agenda on April 15, 2 weeks from tonight, is pretty long. So I'm going to be asking, well, actually, I'm just going to be stating that next week we're going to hold a special meeting in the community room. And so in addition to the study session items that we currently have on the calendar, which is the city holiday calendar, the preliminary 2025 revenue and expenditure underlying forecast assumptions, as well as the review of ordinances, policies, and fees related to the release of public records, including body camera footage. The items that we're going to be adding to the agenda are going to be the ordinance to modify contract processes, the revision to municipal code regarding addressing the council to reflect current law and council direction as to who may speak during public comment. Those are both first readings. And then the 3 resolutions and motions are going to be the year-end budget supplemental for 2023, the Bates Logan Park Renovations Grant Phase 3, and also to consider revisions to council policies regarding public comment. So those are the 5 items that we're going to be adding to the agenda. So just want to make council aware that we're going to be having a special meeting and we'll be in the next room for that. I have nothing else for tonight. Anybody have anything for council members' choice? Member Prang.
Thank you. So just wanted to give congratulations to all of the officers, dispatchers, civilian staff, and volunteers who were receiving awards tonight at the EPD awards ceremony over at the Malley Center. It was a packed house with lots of family members, lots of support for our police department. One of the things that really stood out to me was a common theme of teamwork being discussed and team responses to incidents within the city. One notable event for me was from this past summer where we had a situation on South Cherokee, had to evacuate 3 city blocks, and that event took over 30 police department personnel to respond to, follow up on, et cetera. And I just thought that was amazing that so much coordination went into one event. So just again, wanted to congratulate all of those that received awards tonight and show my thanks and support. Also, just a quick update from the Youth Advisory Board that met last week. They had a presentation on sustainability, lots of fun conversation with our youth. A few things that stood out to me was their noticing of us using decorative plants throughout the city in our landscaping and their support of native plants, which, you know, really aligned with a lot of public comment that we've been receiving lately. It was great to see that the youth notice things like that. They also wanted to just highlight, as we were talking about getting across the city, biking, walking, and the safety of that, they wanted to highlight the 2 intersections that felt unsafe to them, and I thought I would bring that forward to city staff and council as well. Broadway and Dartmouth was one of them, and we talked about some of the efforts that we have going on for traffic calming along Dartmouth, and then Lehigh and Logan was another highlight for them. The last thing that I wanted to highlight from the discussion was that they had I thought, brilliant idea in us, as we look at expanding the trolley services, within Englewood. There was a question as to whether that could be expanded to different routes, particularly up and down Logan, from like, I think they said Broadway area out to Bellevue. I don't know if that's a possibility to look at, but our kids are thinking, and they're thinking about getting across our city, and they have great ideas, and it was just a joy to be at that meeting again. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Prang. Member Ward.
Just one item tonight, circling back to the situation going on in your district, Mayor, with Movement 5280 in the Hawthorne neighborhood. I had a meeting on Saturday with one of your constituents who had some questions about it, and a lot of things up in the air at this point, some questions that we have outstanding regarding the situation out there as well. But I think overall it was a fairly productive meeting. But the big news is I received notice from the facilitator that we've hired to engage in the mediation with the community and Movement 5280 that I have been invited to observe that process and potentially participate in it from a council perspective. And I just wanted to check in with my peers on council if there are any objections. Obviously, as I said last time, Mayor, to a certain extent, I'm fishing off your peer here. So I wanted to check in on that. I'm actually very interested in seeing how this mediation process goes, and I know some of the neighbors that are involved personally, along with some of the people who are also involved with 5280. But if there's any objection, I'll gladly step aside.
Thank you, Member Ward. Would you be participating in just the next mediation meeting, or would it be just throughout?
So throughout the process, I believe is the plan. I was notified that I'll be on the emails that go out to the neighborhood so that I can read through and review the information and the communication between the facilitator on the city's behalf and the neighbors as that process starts to roll out. A lot of things are still developing. I don't think that they have chosen a group of people that they can work with on the neighborhood side yet. So there's some ongoing developments there, but I'm planning on staying informed of the process and participating to the extent that my participation is welcome and productive.
Thank you, Member Ward. You'll just be a neutral observer at this point, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Sounds good. Mayor Pro Tem, anything to ask
I don't know.
about?
I mean, there's nothing against Member Ward, but it does seem a little out of place to have District 4 is so intimately involved in a neighborhood. I don't know if this, I don't know, something just strikes me a little bit odd about it when it's in your district. If there's only one council member going to be represented at these meetings, I don't know, something feels a little off about it, but I don't think it's particularly reason not to do it, but it seems like something that would be more appropriate for your own district, but.
Yeah, I thought the same thing originally when we were discussing it. Obviously, this is the first I heard that Member Ward may want to participate in the mediation process, but I don't have any problem with Member Ward participating in the mediation. But I'm also, I kind of gave it some thought in terms of whether or not council should be a part of the mediation process overall. Just so it allows people to speak freely for whatever reason. I wanted to take a step back from that for that purpose, but that was just my original thought on it. So, Member Noonkemp?
I was just going to weigh in saying I had a similar initial reaction hearing it for the first time, that having a council member CC'd on all of the communication just could change the tone of the conversation, especially as we want to treat this like a neighborhood dispute where we would not always be involved like we would normally. If there was going to be a council member involved, I would prefer it be the representative from the neighborhood, or at the very minimum, an at-large member. So that would be my preference. Also, just thinking about precedent setting and, do we want to get involved? Is this the appropriate level for a council member to be involved in the facilitation of something like this? Or is it more appropriate when we think about all of us having the same information, this information being reported back to us as the process moves along?
Thank you, Member Noonkemp. Member Prang, anything to add? Go ahead.
Not a lot to add. I mean, I do think that, Mayor, if you have the time and capacity, it would be appropriate for you to be the member involved in that process. Short of that, I don't have a problem with Member Ward's invitation as long as, you know, there's a neutrality remained and that it's more in with the purpose of reporting back to council, keeping us, you know, informed on how that conversation is going. I do think that it's a heated conversation right now within the city, and having someone tracking that for us and providing information back to us or regular updates to let us know whether there needs to be further intervention by city staff to help with some of those conversations. I see some benefit to being there. So, you know, unless you have the capacity to show up and do that, I have no problem with member work.
Thank you, Member Prang. Actually, so the mediations themselves, I believe council shouldn't be a part of it, but I do think that I do plan on being involved throughout this entire process in one way or another. We have some questions that we asked of council or of city staff to look into based off public comment, as well as the Tuesday meeting that we had at Malley. So I do expect to be a part of that. I think it's just I just have the concern about being part of the mediation process, because this is a situation that 5280 and the neighborhood need to resolve basically within their, open up the communication themselves without our input, but we do need to guide that conversation if need be at some point. So saying that, well, my preference would be for you not to be involved with the mediation process, if I'm being honest. But if there's members of council that feel that we have enough here that they feel that Member Ward should be a part of it, then, you know, I won't give too much. I won't stand in the way of it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm perfectly willing to defer. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things because perhaps I didn't articulate them well enough at the beginning. The role is strictly observational, and the emails that I will be receiving are emails from the facilitator to the neighborhood so that I can observe how the communication is going and how the facilitation is going. Personally, I think that it's good to have a council presence, and I would argue that in certain ways it may actually be better to have someone who doesn't represent the district observing the process just from a sensitivity level. The reason why this came up was because I attended that Tuesday night meeting and I was literally the only member of council at that meeting. And I've talked to various people who live in your district and attend or sit on boards that I also sit on. And that's how I encountered the issue and why I attended the Tuesday meeting. But after that Tuesday meeting, I talked to the facilitator and I asked her if I could observe, and she said, no member of council has ever asked me that question before. So this would be new to her as well. That being said, you know, if there are concerns, I'm not worried about stepping aside. It kind of threw a curveball to step in. Stepping out might throw a curveball, but that's not a problem for me at all. The last thing I'll say is that we all know that Bridge House is going into District 4.
Right.
So the likelihood is that this type of thing may crop up in District 4 at some point in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And the experience gathered from the neighborhood mediation process here, I think would serve the entire constituency across the city, including District 4, which may be dealing with these issues very soon.
That's a good point, Member Ward. Thank you for that. City Manager Lewis, do we have anyone from staff involved in the mediation as well, or no?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. Yes, we do. Deputy City Manager Tim Dodd was asked by the facilitator to be the city's representative.
Okay.
And insofar as, you know, I think the city should be a party to that good neighbor agreement that, you know, that is the ultimate outcome of that. And so I do think that, you know, someone in my office should be on that just in order to say, yes, we will make sure that the police response is X, or yes, we will make sure the public works response is Y. And so we're glad to serve in that role if council does choose to come on board to be a party to that agreement.
Okay, perfect. Well, Member Ward, I will step back on my concerns about this. If you're able to provide us just an update when you are part of the mediation sessions, just so we have all the same information, that would, I'd be satisfied with that if you want to be part of the mediation. So, anyone in disagreement with that? All right, perfect. Member Ward, thanks for bringing that up. Anyone else? Actually, I wanted to clarify one thing on the special meeting. I realized one thing that I shouldn't have added on there was just the council policies regarding public comment. That's actually going to be on the April 15th meeting. That's going to stay on there. So just the other 4 items should be on the meeting next week. So, all right. And with that, city manager's report.
Sorry, Mayor, just one more thing.
Oh, go ahead, Member Ward. Sorry.
Just for my peers, I am planning on taking at least one meeting off this month, either next week or more than likely the following week, when the agenda is very busy. So don't be surprised or worried if I miss my first ever council meeting in the 3 years I've served on this dais. It is a planned event. Thank you.
So would it be the 15th or the 8th that you're going to be missing?
More than likely the 15th.
Okay. Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
I will. I just wanted to let council know I will miss next week's meeting. We'll be out of town as a family.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Prang, you let me know that you're going to be remote next Monday?
That's correct.
Perfect. All right. So we're just going to have to keep track of quorum or not. So, all right. City manager's report.
And thank you, Mayor, for keeping staff on track with the quorum question today. That was helpful. I just want to highlight a few key initiatives that our Community Development Department has been working on. The Unified Development Code Flyers is one of those projects in an attempt to really provide our residents with information about the new code. We've continued to add features about the code to our website on Engaged Englewood Engaged rather. We also have put a summary of the code and the development process and have been sending that out. We're working on home occupations flyers. And so please note at a council study session that you all requested on home occupation regulations, that has been scheduled for May 13th. So that will come back. I also want to just clarify from tonight's comments that I was employed by the city of Longmont from 2013 to 2019. In that time, the city never undertook any wayfinding or placemaking activities, so I was not a part of any of those because they didn't occur in the city. Much of that was due to the fact that we had the 2013 flood that ravaged Boulder, Weld, Greeley, a lot of the communities throughout that area, and we were in full-scale flood recovery mode. So that was really what one of my main roles in that city was. Regarding the improvements that we're making here, I'm proud to let council know that we have completed Shot 2. That's the name that our public works staff has given to how we are completing the lining of Oxford pipe. And so we shot pipe. Shot 1 was in February, and we were able to, a little delayed, but get the second shot done. So we're making good progress on the lining of Oxford pipe. We also are on schedule, more so than the pipe because of weather. We're on schedule with the detention pond. So I want to just thank Public Works Director Victor Rochelle and his team for the great work that they're doing on the stormwater projects. I also just want you to let everyone know that Citizens Planning School is open. Registration is now closed for the spring session with 25 registrants, and the 5-week program will begin on April 18th, so encourage all of our residents to participate in that. We also, I want to highlight Darren Hollingsworth, who did a great job on March 28th with the City of Englewood co-sponsored Arapahoe Douglas Works 2024 Inclusive Career Mixer Job Fair. So we had 8 employers that were there, 89 job seekers registered for the event. We had a great turnout, and that was another way that we really are highlighting more inclusive, diverse, all abilities kind of program here at the city. So thank you to Darren and his team in community development. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much, City Manager. And with that, everyone, we are now adjourned. It is just before 8 o'clock. Everyone have a great evening.